The deep state is everywhere. Thank you.
Is there a danger to Israeli democracy?
Yes, there is a danger from the shin bet.
The minister's position is the decisive one, and you cannot prevent us from making our voice heard.
They need this judicial reform. They need it now. International money is flowing into Israel right now from liberals around the world to make sure that one of the world's most powerful democracies, Israel, does not lose its liberal grip over the court system. They understand powers in the streets.
But first, are you subscribed? Did you press the like button? And also, did you leave a comment? All those actions, and of course sharing this video with your friends, can really help out this channel and help me reach a bigger audience. I think there are a lot of things that I would love more people to hear, and if you could help me with that, I would really appreciate it. Alright, let's go back. Hi everybody, there are a lot of things that are happening around the world, and I want to talk about it because I'm excited about it finally. You know, there was something that was sitting on my heart ever since I was a young, cute, naive, fresh green soldier somewhere. And during that time, a certain someone was running a campaign against the party of Israel didn't like. The campaign was called V15, and the whole time I had a very good feeling that I know who it is. Of course, I want to talk about something that made me very happy reading, and that is Elon Musk reacting to somebody on X saying that let me read the tweet for you. I'm sorry, the X post. Alright, so Mark R11 here, our good friend, the legal war against Netanyahu, shared some YouTube link that I actually did not watch. Elon Musk then retweeted that post saying, "The deep state is everywhere, thank you." And now we are enjoying the reality of how the woke mindset had wreaked havoc around the world. Listen, we had a gut feeling, you know, when a lot of the positions that had to do with intelligence and military and security in the Biden administration were given but to people who seem to have come from a terrorist sympathizing background. I don't know, seems sus. But now here we have it, straight out of the United States. The funding of the Taliban, Hezbollah, Hamas.
Mr. Roman, are you aware that we are sending $40 million a week to the Taliban?
Yes, sir.
Can you name other instances of foreign aid going to terrorist organizations?
We have assisted Al-Shabaab in Somalia. There's been instances of the Hamzi network in Sudan, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Kataiba Hezbollah, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams in Syria. Dozens of terror organizations have received indirect assistance from U.S. foreign aid.
And the complete support to those who tried to destroy Israel, because there were people in the administration and in the USAID program that wanted to destroy Israel.
Let's use Gaza as our case study. $2.1 billion in American taxpayers' money to Gaza since October 7th when Hamas invaded southern Israel. Waivers were granted because they said that there was an emergency use to have that money come in to Gaza, thereby jettisoning the usual typical screening procedures. As a result, 90% of aid that was going from the United States by way of its agents in Gaza ended up in Hamas-controlled areas. And this is ridiculous.
Seems like the emergency might have been armed terrorists to kill civilians. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate, and even more than that, Samantha Powers, the administrator for USAID, was intent on having Israel not be able to defend itself.
To not be able to defend it.
Correct.
I also want to give a shout out to Caroline Glick that was talking about all the American involvement in Israel and how much they are paying off all kind of crazy leftist organizations here to wreak havoc and to brainwash and completely just spread misinformation and disinformation in the Israeli society, which, by the way, to this day, most of the Israeli mainstream media would not bother just giving a lot of information that Israelis really need to know about.
And the United States has refused to pressure Egypt, a major recipient of USAID, to open up its border to allow the people of Gaza to leave, unlike people in every other war zone in the world, including Syria, including Iraq, including Afghanistan, including Ukraine, where you've had millions of people leave war zones to third countries to seek safety, to seek refuge, to seek freedom, whatever. The United States says in relation to Gaza, absolutely not. Nobody's allowed to leave. Everybody has to stay. They also say, of course, humanitarian aid has to get in. Israel has to provide it. Israel is responsible for the welfare of the Gazans. And not only that, but it has to go through the UN. So these positions are completely crazy in terms of what the United States says that its goal is, which is with Hamas no longer in control of Gaza, because UNRWA, the UN agency that the United States insists is responsible for distributing the humanitarian aid, is Hamas. All of its directors are Hamas terrorists. All of its regional employees in all the different regions of Gaza are Hamas terrorists.
Thankfully, and I feel like maybe this is why the V15 campaign that Obama, I suspect, had led in Israel was not as effective as it could have been, is because in a small country that is relatively densely populated, we live close to each other. And just like Hamas had managed to plan October 7th by using the also advanced technology of meeting face-to-face, Israelis managed to pass information between themselves. Just saying it out loud.
And I'm going to disappoint you. It won't help you. The people aren't stupid. Most of the people see everything that's happening here. The collaboration between the deep state bureaucracy and the media didn't succeed in the United States, and it won't succeed here. Some of you mumble, what? Is there such a thing as a deep state? Does it collaborate with the panic channels? Could it be that someone doesn't see this? We all see it. We know it. And it's time to say it straight to their faces. This is the truth. And do you know why the entire nation sees it? I'll tell you. Because it's obvious to them. As we used to say in kindergarten, it's obvious to them. They see everything. They understand everything.
For example, my mom and my parents, who are doctors, get to actually treat a lot of people from different sectors of life, from media people who actually go to their doctors and complain about what's going on behind the scenes. You'd be surprised how much information doctors are being just handed for being doctors. Anyway, media people, politicians, people who work with politicians tend to say, like, they come to their doctor because their heart hurts, like literally, but they spill everything that pains their heart metaphorically on the checkup process, apparently. So you get whatever is bothering them at the moment.
So the radical left in your country is protecting the court. They rose up in riotous ways in the streets, funded by dark money, as you point out in your article, including money out of the United States. Before we continue watching, please consider helping this channel by going to one of the links below, Patreon, PayPal, or Buy Me Coffee, and sending a little bit of a help really boost this channel, and this is what allows me to keep going and creating this content for you all. So thank you so much for watching, and let's dive in. And there was an interesting case where an author had said that he had moved from one place to another in Israel, and because now he lives in a settlement, his books could not be published anymore.
Last December, I revealed here on the broadcast that the Jerusalem District Court Judge, Abraham Rubin, presided over a petition by the Israeli-Palestinian Bereaved Families Forum, despite being closely connected to it. I'll remind you that the forum petitioned against the Ministry of Education's decision not to allow them to enter schools in the country. And I exposed that the wife of that judge serves on the board of directors of the school that invited this left-wing organization. His daughter studied there, and the principal of that school, who invited them, is actually his close neighbor door to door, according to the judge himself. Following this, the Betsalmo organization demanded that the judge disqualify himself. The judge refused. Later, the Attorney General's representative submitted a response stating that there was no need for him to disqualify himself, which was in complete contradiction to the request of the Minister of Education. Ultimately, today, despite the Attorney General's position, and perhaps also because of our monitoring, the judge issued the following statement. In light of the legislator's determination that a real personal interest exists between a judge's first-degree family member and the outcome of the proceedings, which establishes a conflict of interest for the judge, I will refrain from continuing to hear the petition before me. Attorney Yehuda Pua, chairman of Betsalmo, told us, the decision proves that throughout the entire process, the judge's opinion was biased in favor of the petitioners, despite the conflict of interest he was in. It is unfortunate and outrageous that the Attorney General chose to turn a deaf ear and support the judge despite the severe conflict of interest. Education Minister Yov Kish also commented on the matter. Let's take a look.
We led to a great victory in court. The judge disqualified himself due to a conflict of interest. This came after a very intense conversation with the prosecution. They were not willing to present this position in court. I told them very clearly, your position doesn't interest me. The minister's position is the decisive one, and you cannot prevent us from making our voice heard.
Yeah, those things are not as sophisticated and not that easily hidden as one might think. Unfortunately, since it's been going on for so long, people just take it for granted that some things are true and some things are just the way they are, not realizing that some people just one day had experienced this upside down kind of consequences of foreign actors and those kind of NGOs deciding that, you know what, if you want to have anything to do with publicity in Israel, any kind of media, then you better not live anywhere that is beyond the points that we think are safe for you to live in, which is probably only the left-leaning neighborhoods. And you are not allowed to be anything near, anyone who might not think according to the narrative that is now being pushed. And there was a lot of money behind it, because guess what? Why would a publisher that makes money suddenly not want to publish? Why is it across the board? Probably because it's been corrupted. And thank you, Dodge, for existing and revealing all those truths.
We've had some great legal minds in the United States who have despaired by what's going on with your court system there, who have despaired about the out-of-control attorney general you have who doesn't actually report to the government, because it appears the attorney general works with the courts and the courts work with the press and the press works with law enforcement. My God. And the man is the commander-in-chief of the Israeli forces, and you're surrounded on 7 sides, and they drag him in the court 3 days a week, 3 hours a day for nothing.
All right, I want to talk about the American involvement in Israeli politics and the way they try to steer the wheel towards the kind of governance they wanted us to have. I also want to say something that is very important. You cannot do that unless there is a seed. Meaning the Iranian Revolution, right? So the French and the Brits and the Americans had interfered in a destructive way there and brought back a person like Khomeini from Paris and bought his plane tickets and everything to Iran, just to later have this crazy Ayatollah regime, which is, by the way, you should hear stories from people who got to interact with those Ayatollahs on a personal level. These people are batshit crazy. Like, they, with an atom bomb, they would use it. 100%, no doubt about it. I was even surprised with how delusional these people are. And they really, really, really believe that they need to destroy the world as we know it. There are 100%, they buy into it. There is no fake there. There is no, we just do it for fun. No. 100% belief in that. But the Iranian Revolution would have not happened if it weren't that 30% of the Iranian people were uneducated Islamic fundamentalist savages. They genuinely were a mob that 30% of the population or so was genuinely an Islamic mob. Uneducated, vile, religious, and violent people that had really struggled with the thought of progress and future. It wasn't for them. So the seed was there. This is why not everywhere you could have that kind of revolution. And in Israel, there is a seed as well. There are people who think that they are better than others, that they are smarter, that the Israelis are mostly made out of les miserables, like the French, like the way the French elite views the population or something like that, where, they're not sophisticated. And then there is the other population, Mizrahi, like Chachachim, Amsalems. To them, people who were part of the USSR and came to Israel are brutal and kind of very strict, and their perception is that these are people who are too, how would I say it, like too Soviet, I guess, right? So no, they are just right-wing because they are just brutal, ruthless people by nature. Yeah, ruthless, I would guess. Oh, and then there is the Haredi population and the ultra-Orthodox population, which they call Messianic, which they also don't like. By the way, there are Mizrahi people who are white-minded, passing, whatever. It's not white and black. It's not the right terms in Israel, right? It's not about skin color. It's more of a mindset and worldview. So one can be Ashkenazi, but have the wrong worldview. So let's be honest, like it's more of an ideological divide. So they think that people who came from Arab countries are too much of, like, cannot be trusted, like they're primitive. But if you show that you are woke-minded and like you treat Arabs in a way that shows that you don't really think they are responsible for their actions and things like that, then you can join the club. It's very much anti-religion in general. So they don't like religion. They, in a way, they had looked and shaped Zionism in the most secular. They wanted, like, their dream is to be a nation like other nations, which I think they fundamentally don't understand that every nation, if it wants to be a nation, has its own character. And being Jewish is our character. You can say it's like our vanilla flavor of ice cream. And others are lemon ice cream, and I don't know why vanilla. That's not even I like vanilla with cookies. Maybe that's okay, whatever. So there is something to utilize. And the interesting thing is that these people originally had a very different ideology than what they have now. And the reason that their ideology is so different is that there had been a lot of American influence using the fact that this population is so afraid of others taking over. They are willing, these people are willing to even go against their own values if that means that they still are in control and their policies would still be enacted. So they would do whatever it takes for that to happen. And that is something that is in the Israeli society and had always been there since the beginning. And by the way, it is getting weaker, but those elitists kind of self-appointed aristocracy class had already formed, and it's kind of a hereditary now. But in the beginning, they knew how to find them, right? So you can really, if you go and follow like how people who were part of the Labour Party in Israel, like how much they had changed the way they view the world, suspiciously so sometimes. And it's not just the Labour Party, like they were everywhere, right? In all the parties, there are people who are like that, aka Yoav Gallant.
For the very first time, a former senior U.S. official is describing the scene at the Pentagon on the day that thousands of Hezbollah pagers started exploding all over Lebanon. Our chief national security correspondent, Jennifer Griffin, live at the Pentagon for us this afternoon. What have you been able to learn, Jen, about the communication between Israel and the Pentagon before the Israelis pulled the trigger on that attack?
Well, John, the call to the Pentagon came about 30 minutes before thousands of pagers packed with explosives blew up in the hands of Hezbollah operatives, essentially decapitating the foot soldiers of Iran's Lebanon proxy Hezbollah. Now, a former senior leader at the Pentagon says for the first time on the record that Israel's defense minister did not tell Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin the details of the Israeli operation in advance, and that the Pentagon learned about the exploding pagers watching cable news. Quote, Minister Gallant informed Secretary Austin that Israel had a special capability which he was about to exercise in Lebanon. He was vague about what it did or how it would work, but he wanted Austin to have knowledge of it.
So the Israeli former security minister was 100% an American mole who would run to the Americans with every little thing to get their permission, even against Netanyahu's will. That's probably also why it was so hard to get rid of them, right? So listen, all those people who hate Gallant, who is part of the ruling party, suddenly, when there were rumors that he's going to get fired, went out to the streets and protested in favor of Gallant. It doesn't make sense, but it doesn't make sense if you think that if it's an American mole and the Americans are paying for those protests to happen against the government, and they don't care what reason there is to protest against the government. They just take advantage of local issues, right? So the Israeli society, like those people that are not religious, look at Arabs and as people who are not responsible for their own actions, racist, usually very misogynistic as well, by the way. And they, I mean, the Soviet angle is not that prominent to begin with, but yeah, I'm going to set it aside, but that's basically the mindset. They realized that they cannot win elections anymore, that they are losing the majority vote. So they had decided to take over the jurisdictional system, the court, and make sure that they appoint themselves. So it would never be a situation where they lose control on that aspect of the country. And by doing so, they also had allowed themselves to basically overrun Israeli law systems so that they would be the ones who have the final say in a lot of issues that are inside of Israel. Why? Because they are better than the electorate. They don't trust the people, so they decided to appoint themselves and make sure that they can make their own rules. This Judge Aaron Barak, that what he did is something that really devastated the way that the procedure of ruling goes in Israel. The judge has so much power, they can decide that, for example, if you have a contract with your employee or employer or between two people anywhere, like the judge has the authority to decide that your contract is not to his liking and actually say that it doesn't apply. that's the Ilat HaSvirut. This is what Aaron Barak did. This is he managed to do something that is unparalleled anywhere else in the world.
What the president of the Supreme Court does, he appoints the committee members. That's all he does. And it's possible to reach an agreement on the appointment of committee members that would be acceptable both to President Amit and to the government. It's possible to achieve this if there's goodwill, and there's no need to fight over everything.
On Sunday, we have a decisive meeting regarding the dismissal of the Attorney General. How do you predict things will unfold? How do you hope, perhaps, that things will unfold?
I hope it will be removed from the agenda.
It won't happen.
I hope it will. If the Prime Minister listens to what I'm saying, then he'll say to himself,
Please.
No, this isn't the time to deal with this issue.
So please, your message to the Prime Minister, this is the time.
I don't speak to the Prime Minister through the television.
You talk to him outside of television?
No.
So how will he hear what you're saying?
He reads, I assume. He hears you all.
Well, it doesn't seem like he's convinced, judging by the deep state video he released last night.
Not convinced, not convinced. Deep state is an American concept. We don't have a deep state in that sense. I think the Prime Minister needs to understand that the situation is very bad, and that we're heading, as I said at the beginning of my remarks, toward bloodshed, toward civil war. And I'm convinced, from my knowledge of him and the respect I have for him, that he doesn't want this.
So the Americans did not have to reinvent the wheel. They just, supported these people. That's it. All they had to do is support them and make sure they have more money than all the campaign elections of all the major parties combined. If you try to do anything about the judiciary in Israel, the whole street went crazy for a year. Yeah. So those people who were unelected had more money to run their campaigns to stay unelected than the actual parties in Israel, the three major parties in Israel. I think I saw somewhere the statistic. Their budget combined was not as big as the unelected judiciary budget to wreak havoc in Israel if needed. And a lot of people just don't think and buy into that. So who is to blame? I guess money makes things easier when you have that support, right? For sure. It's really hard to fight the American machine when you don't have the same budget. And of course, the media and the social medias cooperated with it, and that's global. Media globally cooperated with it. So it's very hard to fight, It's like, are you saying the whole world is wrong and you are right? Yes, actually. Yes. Sometimes the whole world is wrong and you are right. I think that's a good lesson to learn in general. I want to show a little clip about the judiciary system in Israel, but I also want to say and talk about other organizations or parts of the Israeli government, society, I don't know, it's called, the army and the Shabak.
Is there a danger to Israeli democracy?
Yes. There is a danger from the Shin Bet. Look, I'm not going to talk about everything I know. Guys, there are dangerous gatherings of people surrounding the head of the Shin Bet. Some of them, in my opinion, I'm saying in my opinion, I don't know this for certain, participated in writing that despicable report. That report is an unreliable report. It doesn't include everything, of course, for all sorts of reasons. Yes, and in my opinion, it was written by senior officials whom the Prime Minister called a junta.
I am currently keeping everything that happened between me and the Prime Minister in private, just between the two of us in this place. It's very clear that I have a lot of knowledge, I could use it, but I'm not using it.
And when will you use it?
If I think that the state of Israel Or if I come to the conclusion that the Prime Minister has decided to act against the law, then, if there's no other choice, I will say everything I know, which I've held back until now, in order to preserve the importance of the relationship between the head of the Shin Bet and the Prime Minister.
There is a clip by Bongino, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so please forgive me, who is the next deputy director of the FBI, had made about the judiciary system in Israel. But before that, I want to touch on a couple more systems inside of Israel that I also want to mention. One of them is the army. Personally, I feel like the army started pushing American interest, I think around 67 or so. That's my hunch. I feel like until then, America was not exactly the prime supporter of Israel. It was cooperation with, first it was Russia for a year or so when Israel was founded, but after that it was France and England. And after that, after around the 67 Six-Day War, it was the Americans. So I think when it comes to the army, so a lot of the generals went through their education through the American system and were poisoned by Columbia and Harvard and things like that. And you can see it, by the way. Here is an example. It's the final days of Herzl Levy, which had this mind virus completely brainwashed by the American thinking style, which is don't win wars for the last, several decades, who did not bother inviting the prime minister when he had presented the conclusions of the investigation done on what happened on October 7th. So, yeah, I'm gonna get back to that letter in a bit after I show you the clip, and I want to talk about another organization that is famous, which is the Shabak, the Shin Bet, so this is what my feeling is. I feel like this organization was actually pretty functional. And, the Green Prince, right? Mossab Hassan Youssef had worked with them. He had worked with the Shin Bet, with the Israeli security forces, to prevent suicide bombers from bombing Israel. And in one of his interviews, or maybe his book, he said, the reason he stopped working with them is that they had policy changes. I would actually go back and see what time exactly that was and what happened there, because my guess, this is when there was a certain switch inside the Israeli security system that had turned it from anti-terrorism and counter-terrorism organization to anti-Jewish and anti-Jewish settlements and anti-Israel kind of organization. Just a feeling. But it seems like this organization hadn't gotten rotten all the way to the core where the judiciary is. So my bet is when it comes to the security systems, so that the upper generals mostly are rotten and suppress anyone who doesn't have a woke mindset from getting promotions. And my guess is that it's not as bad when it comes to the general security services in Israel, meaning the Shabak. But the lucky part with the IDF is that it's not a very hierarchical organization. So relatively speaking, there is freedom for the lower ranking staff to do what they think is right. And I cannot stress how critical that factor was in us not completely losing the war. And this is also something I'll get back to, because another clip I want to share is what the head of the Mossad had to say about the Piper operation and how it was really like behind the scenes. All right, let's watch the clip by the next deputy director of the FBI.
The judicial system in Israel is a total mess. There is a panel. They basically appoint themselves. They have the power to, in essence, overrule any law based on whatever grounds of reason they pick. It's basically a super legislature, their court system. You say, wait, they're not nominated and confirmed by any kind of a political process? It's all inside baseball? Yes. Oh, and they protect themselves. Now, liberals love this because just like in the United States, the legal field in Israel is dominated by who? The libs. And there's nothing the libs love more than a super legislature in black robes. Now, the irony of this is Netanyahu's trying to get some simple accountability here, that there's going to be political nominations. That way they're accountable, and confirmations, just like we're done in the United States, to make sure that the judiciary doesn't get out of hand and try to take on powers it doesn't have. Checks, balances, checks. The libs are losing their minds. They're trying to destroy the country. They're shutting down the airports. They're striking. You've got allegations of military folks not showing up for duty. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big deal.
And now let us look at this letter. So here it says, hello. Wow. So they found, because it was published in the media, that on the 27th of February at 7 p.m., there is going to be a presentation of the results of the investigation on what happened October 7th to the public. Those investigations were shown to different elements like the upper echelon of the IDF and the security minister and journalists. But guess who did not get it? The prime minister. Please pass that on to the prime minister without me having to ask you. Thank you. Tzachi Braverman.
Former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, who remained close to Secretary Austin until he was fired by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, told former Bush White House Press Secretary Dan Senior the entire course of the war after October 7th could have been changed if Netanyahu had taken his security cabinet's recommendation to launch 15,000 walkie-talkies in an operation against Hezbollah's leadership on October 11th, 2023. 4 days after the Hamas attack from Gaza. Netanyahu says they needed to wait because there were not enough pagers ready to explode. They ended up waiting almost a year. In 2007, the Israelis also decided to go it alone when the Bush administration would not agree to carry out a joint strike on Syria's nuclear reactor. The CIA had low confidence in the intelligence, and President Bush worried it could spark a larger Middle East war, something that Defense Secretary Austin also feared when Gallant told him of plans to assassinate Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran and Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut. Those conversations, John, led to the former Israeli defense minister giving scant details to his Pentagon counterpart before the pagers exploded. The issue of trust between the Trump administration and Israel came to the fore last week when the Israelis were angry that President Trump's hostage envoy, Adam Bowler, held direct negotiations with Hamas, and when criticized, angered the Netanyahu government further by saying the U.S. is not an agent of Israel. John?
All right, Jennifer Griffin for us with that story from the Pentagon. Jen, thank you.
Here is Dadi Barnea, the head of the Mossad, explaining how the BP reparation had happened. And he actually explained, see, there were different narratives in the Israeli media because they didn't like the fact that actually Netanyahu had given a green light to the operation against the opinion of the Pentagon, which is clearly also means that against the opinion of the Gallant and the IDF and the general security services in Israel, because they were all American puppets. So if it was against the American recommendation, they would present probably that kind of mindset as well. Maybe they generally believe that, but I think they were persuaded by the American narrative, either specifically when it comes to the pager or in general, way before that. To the point where they actually leaked or tried to leak the operation the day before to the media. Yes, I think in a different world they would be punished for their treachery, but anyway, they were being protected by a great machine of wokeism, so it's hard, I guess. And the truth is, as the head of the Mossad explains here, that it was way more complicated than that. Here it is.
The beeper operation is a younger operation compared to the walkie-talkie operation, which was activated the following day. The walkie-talkie operation was developed about a decade ago, during Tamir Pardo's tenure as head of the Mossad, and continued under Yossi Cohen's leadership. The idea for the beeper operation first arose when we realized that the walkie-talkie operation was not effective in all combat scenarios. Therefore, we thought of another way to strike at Hezbollah terrorists, by detonating a device always attached to their bodies. Our creative people identified the opportunity. The initial infrastructure for the operation was established in late 2022. The first shipment to Lebanon, containing just 500 beepers, arrived a few weeks before the horrific events of October 7th. At that time, thousands of walkie-talkies from the older operation were mostly stored in Hezbollah's warehouses. Activating both operations at the start of the war would not have yielded the powerful battlefield achievement we ultimately attained at the time of their execution. By the time the operation was finally carried out, 10 times more beepers were detonated than we had at the war's outset, and twice as many walkie-talkies were exploded. The dilemma surrounding the operation's activation on September 17, 2024, was significant, very significant. I won't go into details, but I'll say that in the discussion where the operation was approved, two schools of thought were presented, both of which were valid at the time they were raised. The Prime Minister ultimately made the decision, completely contrary to the prevailing opinion in the discussion. And here we are, receiving the award. This is, in fact, an award for the entire people of Israel.
But the people of Israel wanted Netanyahu to lead the country. The people of America wanted Trump to lead the country. And it's very interesting that the ruling classes didn't want either.
All right. Now that things are out there, people are coming out of the closet, all is left is to hope that the general Israeli public would actually digest the news, understand they've been played, and rethink their ways. Some would be able to do that, others probably not because they've been brainwashed, but may we all have the courage needed to put those who want to go crazy on every little thing because they believe that it's they genuinely believe that the scariest thing for Israel's security is that believing right-wing, religious, anyone who doesn't think like them would be the ones who actually are in charge. They see that as a bigger threat than being slaughtered by the Hamas. They are deprived, delusional people. Which, to that I say, if you want to be like other nations, there are other nations to be part of. You don't have to be part of this one. And these are people who they don't come from a poor background necessarily, so you can buy your way out of the country to probably wherever you want to go. So feel free to do that. It's time to admit you lost. You cannot just do whatever you want here and just, it's okay. Bye-bye. Well, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you later.